Hello and welcome to the Groupthink Podcast, Episode 100, which I pity the fool that's actually watched all 100 episodes of this show, but joining us today is one of our favorite regular guests, Ethan Collins from the Ed blog. We've had him on, I think this is his third time, but we haven't had him on for a better part of a year now, so how's it going?
Going well, how are you, Tyler?
I'm doing alright, considering I'm going crazy in lockdown right about now, so...
Yeah. Yeah, are you surviving the coronavirus pandemic?
I have not caught the, I gotta be careful how I say it, because I know that YouTube will ban people who say it the wrong way, but I have not caught the flu of,
okay.
Manchurian persuasion, so.
Well, me either, as far as I know. I actually did get sick at the whole beginning of this, and I didn't get tested because in our area they were trying to only test people who were really sick. But my wife had something similar. We both had symptoms similar to it, but it wasn't too bad, so we might have just had a regular cold, kind of like a bad cold, maybe.
Well, you might have. I mean, I had two friends who had symptoms of it, and they both reported it to the doctor's office, and they're like, yeah, we are not testing under 30 right now. Go home. Just stay home for 2 weeks. And they got better. Yeah. Neither one of them died, so go figure.
Well, that's always good to hear. Yeah, it was the same situation with me. I called the doctor's office, and they were like, yeah, unless you are like running a very high fever consistently, and we're not going to see you unless you're, over 30 or in the danger zone age. So also, I think my sister-in-law got it because she had like every single symptom. And it was right before they started talking about it, and they live out in a rural area. And they tested her for like everything, like the flu and cold and stuff, and none of it came back positive. But she was having like hallucinations and everything. It's crazy.
Oh, geez. I mean, I don't know if hallucination is a blank flu symptom, but
yeah, exactly. I did hear it is one of the symptoms, I think, for the coronavirus, right? Kind of like really bad fever thing.
I mean, if you have like a high fever, wouldn't be surprising if you're hallucinating, because you're basically just baking inside your own brain juices at that point. So
True. Well, it's good to hear you're doing all right, and hopefully you haven't gone too crazy yet.
Well, other than like the spiraling depression and the cutting and need to amputate my arm, I'm doing pretty good. Like, I'm holding up. Okay. I mean, my arm might be gone by the end of it. I'm gonna I'm gonna run out of food eventually. So the left arm is looking real tasty. It's like when the Looney Tunes cartoon when they're trapped on a desert island and the other person just starts looking progressively more like a hamburger.
Exactly. What's that Charlie Chaplin movie where they're in the cabin?
The Gold Rush.
Yeah, the Gold Rush. Yeah.
You're like the only person who would like make that connection, so I appreciate
that. Well, that's just instantly what I thought of. I actually thought of it because I watched it not too long ago, and I also had listened to previous guest Eric and Sana's podcast episode they did on Gold Rush.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just heard that not too long ago, so as soon as you were mentioning that, it like popped into my brain. That chicken monstrosity.
I wonder if that's where that came from. Like that movie is old enough that could be like where the reference to that comes from, because all the classic Looney Tunes were really just ripping off the silent comic comedians for the most part.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I guess. I don't know if it originated with that or not. I don't know the history of the origin of seeing people as food. You
have to watch like the Criterion commentaries and see what they say, because it's one of those like things. It's a little too specific to check, because it's like it's a very specific kind of joke.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you were to Google something like that, you're probably not going to get accurate information.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, what the heck do you put in as the Google search? Like, that's what. What is the keyword for that joke? What is the keyword that strikes the Google algorithms to find that specific result? It's way too specific.
That's probably true. See, and there's a value of getting Criterion collections. Now you just need to go buy more.
Oh man,
sponsored by Criterion.
I've got 2 whole shelves of them already, and I mean, of all the people, I'm assuming you've probably read the Lockdown blog, and I talked a lot about watching. I think I've watched all but 3 of the Criterion discs I own. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's on my website, so.
Yeah, I hope you're reading your own website, because I'm gonna start putting some horrific stuff in there. If you're not paying attention.
Might have to revoke your access. We'll have to look into that. Actually, I do like talking about that though. Those articles are pretty good. I kind of like them because you're using them as a way to kind of record what you're doing during not only the movies, but kind of like you kind of joke about your mental state. I hope a lot of people are doing that so they can look back and see what the silly thoughts they were thinking during all this.
Yeah, I mean,
serious thoughts, whatever.
As a YouTuber I was watching last night put it, remember what you're thinking right now, because in a month and a half, when everyone's saying everyone knew that what that X was the solution to all this problem, you want to remember that you weren't crazy when they told you that. So, because they're gonna start gaslighting us hard, being like, "Oh, no one told you that eating oranges was the solution to coronavirus? You should have known that all along, and then we wouldn't have lost 70,000 lives, Mr. Trump."
Exactly. That's all his fault, of course.
Well, that's how it's gonna get framed. I mean, I'm not even a Trump kid, and I'm like, yeah, that's freaking how it's gonna go down.
Yeah. Well, in the age where everything is politicized, which, I mean, I don't know how, like in the early 1900s when they had that, terrible epidemic flu. I wonder, like, were people politicizing it like they politicized this? It's hard to tell.
I don't know.
There's not as much to read.
Politics was pretty vicious back then too. I mean,
exactly.
There was more of a culture, so people didn't seem to take it the same way, but it was pretty vicious. I mean, you got a lot of mean-spirited people throwing stuff at each other, so you probably would have seen a lot of mudslinging on issues of that. I mean, this was like a decade before FDR basically just did his whole thing to the entire country, so.
Yeah, I mean, people always forget that because, everything's more visible now where you can just see all the hatred on Twitter or all the different websites. Anybody can start a website. I have a website. I mean, anybody can. If I can, anybody can. But, yeah, I mean, if you read records of anything about politics, news articles from the time, Congress at the time, I mean, things are just as crazy, if not worse, So it's always kind of good to have that perspective.
There was a book I've been meaning to read. It's been on my Audible list for like a year now. The guy who wrote it went on The Remnant last summer, and it's called something like 1920 an Election, and it's basically breaking down the political situation of 1920. And one of the things he has to introduce the book with is basically explaining how politics worked in 1920 relative to now, because most of what we understand politically does not exist in 1920. Like, the two parties are completely different. They mean different things. There's different movements, different background and everything. So much of modern politics is retroactively reading modern issues into the past. And if you go back to 1920, it's like it's completely different. The way people thought, the way people drew on their influences and what they referenced. It's not then. It's not now. It's then.
Well, I mean, that's one reason that sometimes art and quote-unquote poetry can be almost a better look into people's lives than facts. Because in our day and age, we kind of have a session with facts and technicalities and stuff like that. But like you said, it's so easy to read our problems into their problems. But if you go to the books of the time, the art of the time, then you can sometimes get a better contextualization of what was going on. Just kind of like how The Wizard of Oz, I forget what year that was written. That was either the early 1800s or late 1800s or early 1900s, I think. I'd have to look that up, but it was pretty much written about a political issue, kind of like the gold standard, whether or not they're going to go with the gold standard. Like that. Of course, it was an entertaining children's book.
I don't know if I that's one of those like too good to check legends about something. I'm not exactly sure is true or not. It might be true, but I don't know.
I've read it from really good sources before. Maybe I am assuming it, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. I'm just like, well, I mean, not like that was the whole meaning of it, but as if it were inspired by that, essentially.
Maybe. I mean, there's some like Paul Krugman-esque logic to that, but like I could imagine that being a little bit of a stretch. I would need to look into it myself and see just how much it is, because intent, it goes a long way when understanding a book. Obviously, the historical context matters, but if the guy who wrote the books did an interview where he explained why he wrote the books, that kind of disqualifies what you want to assume is it's about otherwise.
True. And I mean, of course, the guy who wrote it, I just looked it up. It was published in May 17th, 1900. L. Frank Baum. And I was just kind of looking real quick to see if I could find anything right off the bat. But I just remembered where I read that at. It was actually a history book that I had in high school that I read that at. So whether or not
high school history books are famous repositories for objective understandings of the world, so...
Well, of course, you know. But... And, you know, it could be a situation to where maybe he didn't mean that and they read it into it at the time. You know what I mean? Just how we read our issues into everything now.
Well, there you go.
That's how art works, though. I mean, sometimes that's okay.
Well, ideally, it's what the author intended. I mean, I hate the modern school of thought that says that the artist's intent is completely irrelevant to the piece. I don't know if you've ever read into that at all.
You're talking about death of the author?
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad. I didn't know if I needed to explain that or not, but
no. I know exactly what you're talking about. That was kind of a French philosophy, right?
I think so. I mean, it doesn't matter because it's been adopted all across the world. But it's a very postmodernist philosophy. I don't like it all that much. I mean, to me, you have to take the author's intent as the.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've heard people call that authoritarian. They say, "Oh, I don't like the authoritarian way of listening to a book." And I'm like, "Yeah, the alternative is you read a book and all you get out of it is what you get out of it. It has no objective meaning outside of you," which is a very modern way to look at a book. I mean, one of the worst. It doesn't exist anymore, but one of the worst video reviews I ever saw was from a guy named Kyle Colgreen, who tried to reframe Casablanca as an Antifa movie. And,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I realized when I saw that I officially hated Death of the Author, because while Casablanca is not an auteur work, it is a work that is singular and saying something and came from a group of talented artists who wanted to express an idea. So
absolutely.
Trying to reframe a story from 1943 that was about the silent generation's need to look beyond themselves and look at the greater good as modern myopic political pandering is stupid in the extreme.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. But that wasn't Death of the Author the original name of that newest Donnersmarck movie? I'm looking it up right now as we speak.
What is that?
Never Look Away. Did you Work Without Author? That was the original name of that.
Really?
And it kind of explores that idea a little bit too, just a little bit. I mean, not.
I don't know if that work necessarily does explore that. I mean, I think Work Without Author might be the title of one of his paintings. I mean, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. I think it is. Yeah.
So
well, I mean, I feel like I'm not saying that the movie takes that perspective at all, but like that is like the artist in that movie that it kind of almost satirizes, you know.
I mean,
they're kind of like along that same vein of that postmodern Work Without Author thought, you know.
There's a postmodern read on Never Look Away that's annoying. That is like, because it's about one author escaping two different schools of authoritarian control. It's the Nazi cultural authoritarianism of his childhood, the political authoritarianism of living under the East German communism. He escapes to West Germany, basically winds up in the middle of like an artistic renaissance where the postmodernists are running free, and it's kind of it's kind of a commentary on like it's kind of drawing an equivalency between like freedom in the Western sense and libertinism in an artistic sense, which
yeah, that's true.
I mean, I don't know if that's entirely what the movie is going for, because the movie makes it clear as like, oh, the West's freedom is what allows people to do this wacky, weird stuff that doesn't require any sort of appreciation. It just requires the artist's own happiness and willingness to embrace the material, and that's all that matters. And I mean, that I don't know if that's fully what the film is saying. I mean, the film's ending is pretty cryptic about what it's ultimately saying about the author. I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of the freedom to not be a good person, or the freedom to not be mentally healthy, because it kind of celebrates the main character's schizophrenia in a strange way.
I also think Donner's Mark is just trying to make a kind of a parallel to what was actually happening nationally at the time too.
I mean, I should say I'm probably sounding a lot more negative on that film than I am, because that movie is one of my favorite movies. It's a really complicated movie, and I don't fully understand everything it says, but
you had to. Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, it's something you do have to like put a lot of thought into, and obviously there's context to someone who hasn't lived in Germany for his entire life, who doesn't understand German, the national trauma that exists in that country, and the national sense of what it means to be German in the post World War II world. And there's a lot of layers to what the film's saying about its characters and its country, and it's a little over my head in some ways, but
well, I mean, just knowing people who've lived there in Germany and even talking to German people, like, I mean, they're still dealing directly with a lot of the same thoughts and philosophies and feelings there. I mean, just like a lot of Europe is.
I mean, one of the reasons Angela Merkel is the leader there is because they're afraid to let anyone that might have a stronger voice take the country. I mean, I've heard of the sentiment from modern Germans, like, we are afraid of what we are capable of. And so they don't want to do anything that could be considered what they did before, especially when they're dealing with modern massive issues like everything they're dealing with now, from mass immigration and right-wing extremism and all these different sporadic issues across the political spectrum. I mean, they don't want to be an enforcer state, which is ironic because they're like the most abusive state in the European Union other than Brussels. So
I was just going to mention that what we were saying about that Donner's Mark movie kind of reminds me of have you ever watched any of the movies of Krzysztof Kieslowski?
I have not.
Like Three Colors trilogy and all that?
Oh, I've seen one of the Three Colors movies. There's a very
similar ambivalence. Well, on Twitter a few months ago, I started talking about how after rewatching Three Colors Blue several times, it's become my favorite movie of all time. It's kind of funny because I'm kind of a funny movie consumer, I guess, because for a while I always said that I was unashamed of it, only slightly guilty, that my favorite movie was Braveheart.
Hey, that's manly as heck, man. There's no shame in that.
I love it. I'm not ashamed of it, but it's a little bit cheesy, a little bit melodramatic.
No, the embarrassing part when your favorite movie is any of other Mel Gibson's movies. That's the embarrassing thing. Because then there's always a weird thing to it, like, oh, what's your favorite movie? Passion of the Christ. What? What's your favorite movie? Apocalypto. Why?
Yeah. Does anybody remember Apocalypto?
I own a copy.
Man, I was just thinking about that movie the other day. The only thing I remember about it is like the way it looked, but I don't remember anything about the story.
It only got like one Blu-ray printing, so when I went to buy it, it was like $25. But I bought it because like, it's probably gonna get more expensive over time. So
I need to revisit that, see if it's any good. I do like Mel Gibson as a director.
Oh yeah, he's supposed to do he's got a Passion of the Christ sequel coming out next year.
Oh, is that really happening?
Yeah, I mean it was his follow-up project to Hacksaw Ridge.
Okay.
Which I know it's weird, but I'm all for it. Let's see the guy who has all these very specific and strange religious hang-ups explore the part of his religion he's supposed to be most influenced by.
Yeah, see, because as much as I do like Passion of the Christ, and although it was well reviewed at the time it came out, I think it has received a lot of unnecessary hate. I mean, it was well reviewed, wasn't it? I mean,
Roger Ebert gave it 4 out of 4, which he's a lapsed Catholic too, so that's kind of funny.
Yeah, but I mean, I forget who your guest you had on a couple of episodes back, but you guys were talking about The Last Temptation of Christ. And he kind of, I think he misspoke.
Tyler Smith,
I heard him, he was talking about how Passion of the Christ, when he watched that, it left him cold, you know? But when he watched Last Temptation, anyway, that just, I thought of that. But I was just going to say that the movie's better than a lot of people give it credit for still, I think.
I've only watched it once. Like, I know that movie, like, it's one of those things you're supposed to watch every single year if you're in certain religious companies. Or just religious groups. I mean, my aunt called me on Easter Eve, and she's like, I hope you're doing good and watching Passion. And I told her, we're finishing up Ben-Hur on this side, but thanks.
Yeah, I think Ben-Hur's a better one to watch, and a better movie, too. But because, yeah, I mean, we don't have to get into a whole discussion about that. Started out. This is interesting how our conversation has been so far.
We don't have a planned conversation. We discussed like 2 or 3 topics beforehand, and we didn't bring up any of them.
Oh, that's true.
We're also not allowed to talk about the other thing we talked about for like 5 hours on the phone. So.
Oh. You don't want everything recorded.
Oh no.
Some people should keep that in mind on Twitter.
I have nothing but positive thoughts for some people on Twitter who will go unnamed.
Sometimes you just got to let your feelings out, but not on Twitter. You got to vent, but not to Twitter, not to the internet.
Well, especially ironically, I have to be more responsible on Twitter than I do on other places because eventually I want to get hired by some of the people that follow me on Twitter. So,
yeah. Man, I was just talking to my wife about that the other day. I mean, so many people in our generation, and especially the generation people call Generation Z, it's like they don't understand that. I forget, I saw it somewhere about how, and I didn't check the accuracy on this, so if it's something made up, but I think it illustrates my point well, that a girl had got a NASA internship. And got into a fight with one of the scientists on Twitter, and then got immediately fired. And it's like, I think a lot of people just don't understand that. You know, older people can criticize them, like, how could you do that? But they haven't been taught, and they're going to have to learn it the hard way if they're not taught any other way.
I mean, I feel bad for that girl, but she earned it.
Well, yeah. There's just a little common sense that needs to be applied to some situations. Well, but despite how much we put our lives online, it seems like everybody still has that feeling that they're an avatar online. You know, no matter how personal social media still gets, it seems like we're still slightly in that older mindset, that older internet mindset of I'm completely, no one can trace me to who I really am, and so I can say whatever I want, so there are no consequences.
Well,
there are consequences.
I feel the exact opposite way, because there are about a dozen people I respect who follow me on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, I should be on my best behavior. And then the only times I'm ever tempted to like be controversial at all is to write like random religious posts or joke about, or like not even say something serious politically, but joke about politics. But even that, I'm like, I shouldn't do that. I mean, the other night, I think this morning I shared that video of Alex Jones's interview, which I thought was just absolutely hilarious.
Well,
but I was like, this needs to be memed. This is beautiful. But I wasn't even doing it seriously. I was just like, this is so bad. I love it.
I don't think
Hillary Clinton, demon. George H.W. Bush, demon.
Vampire is what he said.
Oh, vampire.
Which is even funnier, actually. Well, oh man, what a character.
Yeah,
if that is all an act,
it's not. Wow. But you can't.
No, I know it's not. But
his lawyer claimed in court that he's playing a character, but he's not. He does it too. He's too consistent.
Oh well, yeah. Man, that is something else. Whew. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can't act out on Twitter. People I respect are gonna unfollow me. As it stands, I'm like losing. My Twitter account's just bleeding subscribers for some reason. Like,
really?
Like every time I gain someone, I lose someone.
Well, that's just Twitter, man. Like,
I guess, but I'm not that controversial. I'm not. I don't have an edge.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm not sure. I'm sure someone who knows more about social media, like the social media expert, could tell you. But if you look at any account, it's pretty much like you have to be gaining followers really fast for something significant in order to keep an upward trend. Like if you're just kind of have a stasis, you will just like if you're not posting consistently several times a day.
I am.
If you're not getting high engagement. Getting high engagement is one important thing on your, post. Several, I don't know, like everybody I see that happens to my account, and everybody I know it happens to them too. To where it's pretty much like just a very slow climb.
I'm not sure if it's
up, down.
I'm not sure if that's a side effect of like Twitter being an unstable like platform. Like, are the accounts just falling off, or are they people that are just mass unsubscribing, or unfollowing? Is it?
Yeah, that's part of it. Well, I mean, I'm sure you've been on Twitter and you've seen all these people. You'll get people who you're like, who the heck is this? Follow you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I every time I get like a porn account or like a bot account, I immediately block them just because I don't want those people following me. Because I'm like, oh, I want actual people. I want actual numbers. Like, I don't want I don't want to be bolstered by friggin' Russian bots. But
yeah, and that's fine. Like. Yeah, as long as you're getting good engagement on your tweets, I don't think you have to worry too much about how many followers you have, because there are some people I really respect who everybody knows who don't have that many followers.
Yeah.
Like writers and stuff like that, who just aren't worried about their followers. So.
Well, there you go. I mean, I always hear the people. I've had a couple people on who've talked about like, oh man, the social media networks, they're hunting us conservatives, man. They're bleeding all our followers and they're suppressing us. And I'm like, yeah, you're not that important in the grand scheme of things. So why would they go after like some random guy on Twitter with 20,000 followers?
I mean, we've seen instances in the news of them going after people, but I do think that's pretty rare.
I think everyone thinks they're the ones being targeted. I don't think that it's specifically going after everyone.
And of course, when you're afraid of that already, as soon as you see, oh, I'm losing followers, your first thought is going to be, they're coming after me.
Yeah.
But unless you're seeing like a huge significant, like you drop half in 1 hour, I don't think they're coming after you. Because besides just knowing how a company like Twitter, being in IT for several years like I have, knowing how a corporation like Twitter operates, they are not going to pay somebody to do that kind of thing unless they think they're going to get a real return on investment. Because you got to think, like, you would have to pay at least one person, probably a whole team of people to do that if they were combing through and looking for all those tweets. And that's a lot of money. Even if you pay them the most basic social media job wage you can pay them, that's still a lot of money. And a corporation like Twitter is not going to bleed money like that.
The corporations are going after us, man. They have entire teams dedicated to hunting us down. They just gonna.
Well, it's more sinister than that. They're affecting people. They're not going to come after. I mean, they do go after some people. I mean, I've seen it before. Like, we've all seen it before, but you got to be thinking a longer game than that.
Well, there you go. I mean, I don't even know if they do the shadow banning like they used to do anymore. But I remember when
I mean, they got called out for it so many times.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that I'm pretty sure my account. I had a burner account for a while that I just crap post politics for like 2 years, and I stopped using it. But I mean, I think I used that. I think that account probably got flagged because I was just yelling at people constantly.
Yeah, now if you have something inactive for long enough, I think they might.
I mean, I haven't used it since college, so I mean, I just created it was just so I could have something on there where I could like rant without making myself look bad, and didn't use my name, didn't do anything, but
Yeah, I've got an account like that I tried to have an account where I tried to, for just a little while, every day put out a Nicolas Cage quote. And I called it, it's still active. I haven't used it for so long, but it's still active. And every once in a while it gains a follower. Nick Cage Quotes. That's what it's called. At Nick Cage Quotes. And I think I had like a total maybe 30 posts.
Oh, man. That's a project right there. That's something you dedicate time to. Like,
I mean, for a while I was calling it Nick Cage and the Bad Seeds. Like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, you know?
I mean, there are like accounts out there, like uninteresting photographs and giant military cats, where someone is legitimately finding uninteresting photographs or photoshopping cats into military photos once a day. This is their routine. This is someone's obsession, and I mean, like, just having an account like that sounds exhausting to me. Like, just, I'm gonna dedicate my life to one thing. Photoshopping cats onto aircraft carriers. Every single day.
Sometimes I wish I had that kind of focus. But I just want to do too many things.
Well, that's
and I have a career.
Well, there you go. I think there's a lot of people without careers. So there's probably every single one of those burner counts is a person who is useless to society.
I mean, the pictures are pretty funny, so maybe they're not completely useless.
Well, they're not getting paid for the giant military cats, so.
Oh, man. Well, did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
I've still got time. I don't know how much time you got, but we did talk about 2 or 3 subjects. I mean, you said you wanted to talk about Seventh Seal for some reason a couple weeks ago,
Oh, well, I was just suggesting that might be a good topic, but, I mean, have you seen... Well, I mean...
I've seen it like 2 or 3 times, so I'm... Yeah. I wouldn't call myself like an expert on the movie in any sense, but it's probably my favorite Bergman movie that I've seen so far, but I haven't watched all of my Bergman movies yet, so...
Well, let's talk about your article, your latest quarantine article.
Yeah, that was probably the most... That was the most depressing of the 3, because I was tired and emotionally frustrated writing that article, and I hope it didn't come off too badly when in the actual final product, because I was just like, I'm friggin' done, people. I can't... It took an entire day to write 60 paragraphs about all those films.
Well, I think this one is actually my favorite of the 3 you've done.
Really?
I kind of like the darker tone of it.
I mean, the darkest one I thought was the second one, where I was just like, oh man, the world's blowing up, China's taking over the world. Anyway, movies.
But those were jokes, though.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, China's actually doing bad things. I mean,
That's true.
I put my tweet in there that I just listed off all of the bad things China's done in the past year, like just the last year alone, and that was like a serious. But I don't know if I would. I mean, the jump was kind of funny, but what makes why do you like the third one more?
Oh, well, I mean, I was kind of just joking. I don't know if I do like the third one more, but
I'm curious it was what you thought about it either way.
Well, it's just kind of like serious. I kind of like that it's like, because it reflects how everybody's feeling about quarantine right now. When we first went into it, everybody was all hype about it. And then for a while, everybody got used to it. And now everybody's just done. Everybody's just done.
Pretty much.
Here in the rest of the world, too. So I thought it reflected that.
Well, there you go. I mean, my only problem with that is I think that's kind of dime a dozen right now. Maybe I don't know if everyone else is writing like that way, but I don't feel like I'm original in saying, oh man, this is getting depressing. But
oh no, I mean everybody's There's
probably more value in being upbeat right now than being authentic.
Yeah, I mean there is a lot of value in being upbeat. I mean, we'll see. I'm interested, like just thinking about entertainment, because obviously a lot of people have gotten value, both positive and negative, out of entertainment throughout this whole quarantine.
Oh yeah, but I think one of the saddest videos I saw this entire quarantine was Dan Olsen's video about Contagion, where he's literally just sitting on a couch the entire video talking about why watching Contagion 20 times since the quarantine began has been cathartic for him. And I'm like, dude, this is You need help.
Yeah, I don't think I would want to watch it that many times.
It's not that he wanted to. It's that apparently he was just so psychologically shocked that it needed to have a version of what was going on that he could actually process. And I'm like, dude, this is an academic way of saying you're having an emotional breakdown.
I mean, if it's there to help, if it helps, then, I mean, the first thing is to be honest with yourself, I guess.
I would trust the guy that said, I've watched Star Wars 10 times in the past 2 months, than as opposed to the person that said, I've watched Contagion 10 times in the past 2 months.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that would definitely be more uplifting.
Although I did sell a Contagion piece to Rebler back in March, so I won't pretend I'm not a hypocrite.
Oh, have they published it yet?
Oh yeah, that was the second one they published. I've sold 2 pieces, and their editor is looking over a 3rd piece right now, which
oh good.
I gotta friggin' bug him about because I was hoping they would publish it on Tuesday, and he forgot to read it. He forgot to look at it.
I submitted a pitch to them, but never heard back. It was kind of a dumb pitch anyway.
Either way, I mean, it's worth asking. It's worth following up because, in my experience, I won't say anything bad about Sonny because Sonny's a good guy. I mean, he gets so many emails on a daily basis that he occasionally forgets to answer.
Oh yeah, definitely. I understand that. I've actually been.
I should send him something today and be like, "Hey, dude, you forgot."
Yeah. Oh yeah, I really like what those guys are doing over there at Rebeller, and just what Cinestate's doing in general. I love.
Apparently, they bought Birth Movies Death, which is news to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that mean Birth Movies Death is now going to become conservative?
No, I don't think so.
Because they were like, they're like the most far, not the most far left, but they've got a lot of lefty writers. They have had a lot of lefty writers.
I mean, I kind of hope they just keep it like it is. I mean,
yeah. I mean, the funny thing is
that helps people keep from saying that Cinestate's just a conservative hostile
takeover company. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, though, obviously they're conservative. Sonny is a conservative, obviously.
Very. Although if you listen to his podcast, they have a conservative, a libertarian, and a liberal on. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, that is one of my favorite recent podcast discoveries across the movie aisle.
It's so good.
Oh yeah, and I've actually been purging a lot of my subscriptions lately, and that is one that definitely made the list. Just because everything's been so busy. Actually, the funny thing is, because you said you were wanting to talk about quarantine, what we've been doing, I have been just as busy, if not more busy, during quarantine because I work IT for hospitals.
Well, and there you go.
In fact, I've got to travel today to go to a hospital. I got to do a late night transition there.
Ooh.
And yeah, so it's not been any slower at all for me. And in fact, only more work. Mm-hmm.
I technically work IT because I work as an AV guy I do computer for an AV company. I've been offered IT positions higher in the company that I wasn't technically qualified to do at the time. So, yeah. I mean, I've thought about trying to become a full blown IT guy, but the thing I want to do is to be a writer, but that's almost impossible to break into. So I'm like,
yeah,
IT work it is.
Yeah, well, man, I always struggle with that personally because, once I knew I was going to get married and have a family, I kind of had to decide what am I going to pursue, IT and have a career that's going to be more solid, or writing. And of course, I can always do writing on the side, and I do. I have my website, and I don't write on there very much anymore, to be honest. But, but I mean, I interact on Twitter a lot about music and movies and stuff like that. And sometimes I kind of use that as an outlet to get rid of some of the writing needs. But also, I've kind of transitioned to trying to do more creative style writing, like poetry and narrative essays and stuff like that, and submit those for publication. I've got a few published as well, a few more out for consideration, just because I've been trying to find a way to take my love for writing and love for things like storytelling and have it in such a way that I can still have my career. But it's such a struggle. I mean, which way do you go? Because like for a long time, so many people, you know, just like you're saying right now, are kind of in that space to where the job is kind of could take off or the writing could take off, and it's hard to tell.
Yeah, so. I mean, I'm not in a position at the moment where I have to worry about a family. I mean, I'm going to be moving the next few months as soon as the lockdown's over, and I might, and depending on where I move, I'm either going to be buying a trailer with outright, and because I have enough money in my savings that I can just buy a trailer. That I can, and I'll just, at that point, my monthly expenses are only be like $500 for the lease, and then food and personal effects above that. So I'm not gonna be in a position where I'm worried about money for a while. Yeah. But if I do up an apartment, it's gonna be a little different because I'm gonna have monthly expenses. But
yeah,
I'm in a position right now where I can kind of just keep going by on my low wage AV job for a while. But eventually, I'm gonna be like, oh, I have kids on the way at some point. If I ever get married and have kids, I'm like, I gotta be responsible now, and that means I gotta do the boring IT job for my work that I don't want to do, because it means I no longer get to just hang out at work, because the thing I like about my job is it's very low intensity. Like, like, most days it's not that intense, but the days where it is intense are the days they pay me for, because the workload just gets super high, and they're sending out like 200 computers going out right now, and those days, they're happy to have me there, but the rest of the days, it's like, oh, Tyler, just keep everything clean and nice, and we're happy with you. So I like that, but moving up to an IT job, it's going to be like, oh, going to be 24/7 call support, and I have to be responsible for getting everything fixed, and if I can't get things fixed, we're going to have a problem very quickly, so...
Yeah. And, of course, a lot of times it is the thing you focus on that you succeed in. I mean... That's true. I mean, you just see that with a lot of aspiring writers, a lot of aspiring artists of different kinds. And the ones you see succeed are the ones who are like, you know, absolutely busting their butt to get the jobs. But then again, sometimes people bust their butt for years and don't really see any success. So it's so hard to know.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I'm curious as to what my success can even be at this point. Because I hit that stride in December where I got published at, like, in quick succession. I got published at Daily Wire, then I got published at Hollywood and Toto, then I got published at Rebler. So my backlog, like, doubled over the course of, like, a weekend. And, like, over the course of a month. And I was like, oh, does this mean that is there gonna be some exponential growth here? Is people gonna start noticing my stuff? And it hasn't been the case, necessarily. I mean, I've gotten a couple of interesting people have followed me on Twitter, but... That's about as much as I've gotten.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't lose hope on any of that stuff. I mean,
I haven't lost hope. I mean, I've heard someone say that your writing career takes about a decade to break in or something like that. And if that's the case, then I'm within 3 years of getting a paid job, which could be cool, but that's still up in the air. So.
Well, just think about all the writers, directors, actors, poets who did not break through until they were older. I mean. Think about one I don't remember where I was listening to this about, but they were talking about Gene Hackman and how he didn't really break through until French Connection, right?
Yeah, and he would have been, what, 45, 50 at that point?
Yeah. So there's so many like that. I mean, so it just depends on for me, what I've realized in life is that it's always your priorities. Like, what are your priorities, right? And so you have to try to figure out how to sort out life from there.
Well, there you go.
I mean, for me, yeah.
I think
it was. What's that?
Go ahead. I was gonna talk more about the writing, but go ahead.
I mean, it was just kind of a funny situation for me because when I was in high school, I was fully intending on going toward a writing career, and I mean, the path that people who advised me told me about was that you kind of pretty much have to go for an English degree or a creative writing degree or something like that, and then probably become a teacher. And I mean, I was ready to go that route, but
I've heard nothing but bad things from English majors, so I would avoid it at all costs. But
well, yeah, but I'm just telling you what people were telling me, and what people like that are still telling kids today.
Oh no.
But I mean, I was looking into that, but when it came to actually pay for college, that's where the trouble came in. And I was just, my parents were basically like, look, we're going to support you, like as a family, no matter what, but we'll help you pay for a STEM degree. But, if you're welcome to go for whatever other kind of degree you want, but you'll have to figure out how to pay for that yourself.
Well,
So
as someone who got a tech degree, it's mildly overrated. But then again, I picked a bad one, so.
Well, I think STEM degrees are some of the best return on investment degrees.
Well, my audio engineering degree didn't go anywhere, so.
Oh.
My associate's degree in audio engineering, so.
I guess I'm talking more like computer science, computer information systems type things when it comes to IT.
Exactly. Mine's essentially creative arts with a fancy title, so.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing for people, if anybody's listening and they have a field they're wanting to go into, what I've found is that a lot of it is being willing to move somewhere. Where I grew up was rural Missouri, and there aren't any IT jobs there. Well, there are a few, but number one, they don't pay very much, and number two, anybody in the area who could apply for them has it. So I had to be in an area to where they actually had the job, that's one thing. And I mean, I've seen people get the kinds of degrees that people make fun of, like someone in one of our friend groups does marine biology, and that's one of the classic ones to make fun of. Marine biology, you might as well go for basketball even, But she works consistently, but she is out in Maine, going out on a boat with fishermen and stuff like that for a whole. So it's a woman, and she's like out on a boat for weeks and weeks with all these guys and stuff, and it's just, you just gotta look into what you're wanting to go into and find out realistically what it's going to look like and where you need to live to do that job. And then you got to decide for yourself, are you willing to go through that?
Or you got to be like me and just be happy with your bozo AV job that doesn't pay anything. So.
I mean, if it pays the bills and it puts, food on the table, then that's not nothing.
It puts the lotion on the basket for the meantime, but that's. It's not a good. It's one of those things that's like, I could do it long term, but I hope. Yeah. Eventually, I gotta graduate into something, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, just keep going. I mean, keep writing. In your instance, I'm saying all this to try to be encouraging, but.
No, I mean, it's one of those things that's like. It's. I've got a passion deficit for things outside of writing, so it's one of those things where if I'm going to do something as like a job, just as something that I need to do to pay the bills, then I need to figure out what the heck that is and when, because if I'm ever going to be a dad, I gotta actually have a job that allows you to buy a home and take care of people. So yeah. See, for me, having a family was one of my highest priorities. And so that's why I decided to go ahead and go forward with the STEM degree and the IT job. And God, I've always prayed, because it's always a temptation for me to slack on the work side of things and to go more into writing there's always that temptation, like, oh, I could work on some writing at work or whatever and let down. And, I have to remember what my priorities are, and I've always prayed to God that He'd show me what He wants me to do, and He's opened a lot of doors in IT. So I've kind of just taken that as that's the direction I should go. But I absolutely want to continue pursuing writing on the side. I mean, that's why I was kind of saying that I've tried to transition into more creative writing stuff, because what I've found in writing about music and movies is that you have to stay relevant, as you well know. Yeah. Or you can be like me and write a 10,000 word article on Kingdom of Heaven. So.
Well, that's always relevant.
Well, yeah, which I did. So.
I just say that because I do love that movie. Actually, I like the director's cut of that movie.
Oh my! I have a couple friends who get very in the weeds on that movie about.
Oh.
I mean, you should read my article that just went live yesterday. I mean, I kind of broke it down and tried to be honest about it, but I have a couple people who are like, heresy, that movie is... that movie is lies!
Well, okay, well, first of all, it's hard to know if the facts we do know are true or not.
I've got some friends in medieval studies who would disagree, but there you go.
Oh, well, yeah, of course, some stuff is, certain, but... It's like one of those things to where, like history is told by the victors,
Well, who won the
that's
who
true
won
on
the
both
Crusades?
sides, unfortunately. Exactly, and that's why it's so muddled. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I've just tried to transition because, like, I've realized that with my job, with opportunities increasing at that, and family life, and trying to get more involved in my church life as well, it's harder and harder for me to stay relevant. So I've tried to transition more into creative writing, the more creative writing side of things, so that I don't necessarily have to stay as relevant, and I can just pick it up whenever I have the opportunity. And I've actually gotten a few. I had a period there where, kind of like what you're saying with your writing, I was getting several poems published in succession, and I'm kind of in a dry spell right now. But I have a couple more things coming out later this year, and I keep submitting. I mean, I just kind of keep it as my side thing. I haven't made money off of it yet. I mean, let alone poets. Pretty much, almost none of them make any money. So anyway, but
well, that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been reviewing a book on poetry actually for Geeks Under Grace that it'll probably go live sometime next week.
What if you don't mind me asking, what's the book?
Spirits in Bondage: A Cycle of Lyrics, which is it was the first book C.S. Lewis ever published in 1919. So
yeah, I saw you talking about that on Twitter. I right here beside me, I've got the book I'm supposed to be doing a review on for Geeks Under Grace.
Wait, oh yeah, I forgot you're doing Geeks Under Grace articles.
Well, this whole I actually spoke with oh man,
Lexi?
I'm just blanking on her name. Yes, and I told her I'm so sorry I haven't got you those reviews yet. I know that I said I would, but number one, the books came late because the editor Karen Swallow Pryor had sent me a couple of them, which was wonderful of her, but I just hadn't. Well, with this whole with my job, I had to work a lot with the COVID-19 response, and then all the other associated things, and getting the books late just threw everything out of whack. And I have to actually, sit down and read it for one thing. But it's a Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad.
That's a nice looking cover.
Commentary, and yeah, it's really well designed. Commentary and questions in it by Karen Swallow Pryor. And the idea is that her goal is to get people to read classic literature who maybe wouldn't, and even like some of the non-Christian classic literature, like Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And it's kind of like she's trying to help people, especially who may be new to it, think about it, engage with what the work is actually trying to say, rather than just being, confused or intimidated by the language of it. So that's really good. I really do want to get that review out. But I also have a poet here that C.S. Lewis hated, T.S. Eliot's collected poems. C.S. Lewis absolutely despised T.S. Eliot, from what I hear.
Well, Eliot also despised Lewis. Or they were friends, but they despised each other's work, I should say.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. I can't get a good... I'll have to read more about that. But I really do think...
I reviewed a pair of plays about C.S. Lewis recently, and I distinctly remember they brought up T.S. Eliot in one of them. I think it was during The Most Reluctant Convert. They bring up T.S. Eliot and how the two of them were sniping back and forth to each other.
And then T.S. Eliot, he was converted as well. He became
they were part of that brief moment in the 1920s, 1930s when the intellectual class had a minor renaissance of Christian thinkers.
Well, yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't think it was widespread Christian, but you had minor ones.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, T.S. Eliot was kind of one of the premier poets of his day. And then when when intellectuals get to the part where he converts to Christianity, they just start kind of like shying away.
People who may lean more towards C.S. Lewis, this is something I've been reading about lately, may think of some, like the T.S. Eliot, they may group him with the Ezra Pounds of the world and the modernist, and kind of, because C.S. Lewis hated, part of it, I think, was that he hated the movement that T.S. Eliot was a part of, the modernist and all that, is that the impression you've got from it?
I haven't read Lewis's direct words on Eliot, so I can't speak to his personal critique. But
the rejection of tradition and all that in certain ways.
I don't think Eliot...
The thing is that T.S. Eliot tried many times, because T.S. Eliot was also a critic in a lot of ways. He did a lot of criticism, and he was, in many ways, tried to resurrect the memories of a lot of classic poets that were kind of being looked down on at the time. And you especially see it in C.S. Lewis's post-conversion work. He was definitely going a little more traditional at times.
Sure.
He was still experimental. But I really do, man, the Four Quartets, I've been reading back through the Four Quartets again. I think that's one of the greatest works of Christian art of the 20th century.
Is Four Quartets Lewis or Eliot?
Eliot.
Okay. So about 2 years ago, one of my best friends is an English major, and she's out in New York studying. And she told me a couple of years ago I needed to read T.S. Eliot's Christianity and Culture, because she was reading it for a school assignment. So I bought it, and about 6 months ago, I started reading it. And over the course of like a month, I think I got 20 pages into it, because it is some of the densest writing I've ever encountered. I haven't even finished it yet. I've just been trying to page through it like one page at a time, just to kind of get a full understanding of it, because it's so difficult. I wish I could find like an audio recording of it, because I think I would actually be able to get through it then. But I'm just gonna have to try again. I'm gonna have to just dedicate like a couple of weeks to getting through this book. I don't know if that's just Eliot's style, is that he's just that dense in his prose, but
yes.
I hate saying that too, because I hate being that guy that's like, oh, this book is too smart for me. I hate being that guy, and just because it makes me feel like a dullard, but it's tough.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that too much. I do think sometimes it can be difficult for anyone to read Eliot because of how dense he is, especially his poetry, especially his early poetry, the poetry that is most praised. Sometimes he puts references in there to where it's like, who would even know what that means? Who at the time knew what that meant?
What do you mean Andrei Rublev isn't a mainstream movie? Who doesn't have time for 3 hours of Soviet existentialism?
It's kind of a similar situation. Yeah, but
that's the thing, though, is when you're a critic, you read people that talk like that, and you're like, oh, I probably should care.
Yeah.
Film criticism is such a harsh culture.
Oh, well, yeah, of course. And the history of criticism is interesting in and of itself, because critics always, they consistently get things wrong anyway.
Well, critics also have this miraculous ability to sense references in deep cuts in material where it's like, wasn't that a lovely reference to Milton in that book? And I'm just like, what?
It all depends on who your audience is. If you are writing for people who are going to know what those references is, it's okay. But if you're not, you're talking about C.S. Lewis. That's what makes C.S. Lewis so wonderful, is that almost anyone can read him. An academic can read him and get something from it, and just a layman, can read him and get something out of it.
Oh yeah, but he's not an explicitly difficult writer, though.
No.
I know people that say he's too difficult, but you kind of have to not be a reader to not be able to glean something out of it.
Yeah, the C.S. Lewis has a talent that I think that, as much as I love T.S. Eliot, I think maybe he lacked, in that C.S. Lewis could engage with really difficult arguments, really complex arguments at times, in straightforward language. And that's I'm not able to do that.
Well, there you go. That's the thing about, I don't know, I remember last year I went and saw that Tolkien movie that wasn't particularly good, but
no, it wasn't.
No, but when I reviewed it for Legal Insurrection, and the one takeaway I had from it was, these people probably would have been fun to go to college parties with. And I had like an existential crisis over the course of a weekend where I was like, I should go back to college and become an English major, and like then I could hang out with intelligent people like J.R.R. Tolkien in their college years and like learn how to become a pretentious academic that can understand Milton references and complex art.
a lot of times those people, I mean, as much as I adore many of them, a lot of times they did come from, upper class rich families. And that's why they had the inheritance to work on, like a lot of families in England at that time.
Oh, yeah.
To where someone like you and someone like me is not going to be able to do that.
Anyone can do it if they're smart enough. I mean, Spencer Clavin went to Oxford, so...
Oh, no, I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying they were able for periods to not necessarily have as active of a job or things like that.
Oh yeah, they could live off their wealth and just enjoy being a literary critic for a couple decades.
Yeah, just go hang out at the pub.
Oh, lucky souls.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. No, I don't want to try to propagate the myth that you have to be rich to get an education. I don't want to. No, you absolutely can get an education, and you don't have to get an education from an Ivy League place. That's not necessary either.
No, I mean, I just wish part of me just wishes I could get invited to those parties, because that seems like an interesting group of people. Like, I'm already a social recluse that doesn't talk to people. At the moment, I've got my own little corner of the internet. I yell at it every single day. That's what
I was about to say. That's what we have the internet for, right?
I mean... I like when I can find the smart parts of the internet as opposed to the parts of it that spend 5 hours online arguing about The Last Jedi, but...
Even the smart parts are dumb in a lot of cases.
I
think that's just humanity.
I need to reread Thomas Sowell's Intellectuals in Society, because I need to get a good primer on his points about the ways being intelligent makes you blind to the ways you're not intelligent. But... Yeah. Have you read any Sowell?
Only a little bit. I have one of his books, Basic Economics. Isn't that the name of one of them? I have that on my shelf right now.
That's the one he always says, if you only read one of his books, read that one, because it's the one...
I've started on it, but I haven't finished it.
Yeah, I mean, his books can be a little long-winded. I've been reading Quest for Cosmic Justice over the course of the last month during my sporadic reading time, and that's only like 200 pages, and it's a hefty read, even for one of his brisk books.
I appreciate him, though. I really appreciate what he's done for.
Oh yeah, you read
education.
I read all of his stuff, and then I'm mad that most people don't understand this. I'm like, this is such basic stuff, and I hear so much bull crap from smart people that don't understand this.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into thinking about that. I mean, even if you're smart, if you reject a lot of the foundational, anybody who's writing has to work from a foundational belief. Thomas Sowell writes from a foundational belief. So someone like you're talking about could read it and they would not be receptive to it necessarily. Unless you were able to convince them of the foundational thought, which is why Thomas Sowell says to read Basic Economics, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean,
he tries to lay forth.
I know he was literally a student of Milton Friedman. Like, I know he literally did study under him back in the day. So obviously he's predisposed to libertarian economics, but I think he makes the best case I've ever read for it of any writer, probably since Hazlitt. So
yeah, and sometimes I wish we could have there are a lot of conservative intellectuals today, but I wish we could have some really rise to the top, just like we were talking about Lewis and Eliot.
Well, Jordan Peterson did for a while, so
yeah.
And now he may or may not be recovering from a coma in a Russian sleeping ward, but no one's sure. So
yeah, I wish the best toward him. You were talking about him with was it
Emily? Or
you had a podcast, huh?
I've talked about him a bunch. Was it with when I had the Calvinist theologian on, or was it when?
Yes, I think that's it.
Yeah,
Emily.
Yeah, Emily Urban.
Yeah, I listened to that quite a while back, maybe when you first released it, and I thought your guys' episode on him was really good. from a more of a Christian perspective, and of course, in her case, from a Reformed perspective. Because, I mean, a lot of people accuse him of stealing a lot of his ideas from the Lewises of the world, G.K. Chestertons of the world. And
he's stealing from like a Jungian, what's his name? The guy who wrote Hero with a Thousand Faces, Campbell. He's more of that school. He's more also because he's not religious. He's just he's a reluctant atheist more than anything else.
Yeah, I really liked what you all were saying there. What she was saying about she hopes that this whole experience can kind of bring some things to light for him. I mean, because like he's helped a lot of people, because in society, like there are certain forces that have, of course, that, if you're a white man, you're evil, which is oversimplifying it, of course.
Oh man, but, this podcast is just the nexus of evil.
But my point is that, okay, when people say that those kind of people are saying, if you're a white man, you're evil, that's a complete oversimplification of what they're saying. Of course, there are some radicals that say that, but
oh yeah.
what a lot of people who want to move away from having a privilege for white men what they maybe haven't understood is like how much of a vacuum you're going to leave for the young people who are growing up. And those are the kind of people that Jordan Peterson has helped. The people who feel like culture is telling them they're worthless. I mean, anytime you have a segment of society who's told they're worth less, than someone else, you're going to have negative things develop. I mean, that's why we see a lot of the internet culture we do, obviously,
Every time Jordan Peterson speaks, a potential school shooter has a revelation.
I think that the potential school shooters would be helped by Jordan Peterson. But the problem is, like what you guys were talking about, there's not that foundation. In any belief system, you have to have that foundation, and he's trying to build a house on sandy soil.
Well, I've said it a million times. Jordan Peterson is the ultimate extension of modernity. He's the one person in the room who seems to be realizing that something is wrong, but it's not clear what is wrong. And I don't think he's gotten to the point where he can bring himself to admit that he can believe in something. I think he seems to have found a solution in religion, but he doesn't seem to have found any sort of transcendent value in it beyond its use as a practical matter. So it remains to be seen where he's going to go. He's talked about Lewis in the past. He's talked about some of the value of his work. So it's possible he might have like a late in life experience that draws him more into religion. But at the moment, the company he keeps is very not religious, to the point where I'm not sure he has it in him to necessarily take the final leap, because that's what ultimately he needs to do. His mind is fertile in the religious place. He just hasn't been willing to take that final leap.
Yeah. I mean, there's also, it could be slightly controversial, I suppose, opinion that I have that a lot of conservative philosophy needs a moral foundation to restrain it. Libertarianism needs some kind of moral restraint.
No, it doesn't. Libertarianism is immune to rules.
Well,
I'm not saying it's not. That's the problem with libertarianism generally, is that it doesn't have a rule set, because libertarians are and basically just closet anarchists. But
well, I don't know about that. But
closet anarchists, not full blown.
Look at like. Okay, so if you talk about capitalism, I'm fine with capitalism in a lot of ways, but if you look at the early 1900s, the terrible working conditions that people had that then created the desire and need for unions, like that is because of capitalistic, people creating companies, but they were also coming up in a time where moral restraints were starting to be moved, especially for intellectuals. Darwinism starting to become more prevalent. You have these heads of these companies who no longer feel that they, have to care. So you get terrible, terrible work conditions, which helped create the unions. And that's what I think you get if you have a freedom philosophy without restraint. I mean, there has to be restraint somewhere. And that's why our culture is fracturing in so many different ways. Because people know there's a need for restraint, but they just don't know where to get it from. So you have some people going one way and some people going another.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of reached the logical endpoint of a culture that atomizes to the level we have, where everyone is just an individual. I mean,
individualism, the ultimate end, almost.
Well, yeah, it's. I mean, I'm pretty radically individual, but obviously there's you reach a point where a person is so removed from collective value and from social from any sort of social fabric or social tradition or a sense of how their life should be based on collective knowledge that the person just disintegrates. I think that's what we're seeing largely nowadays. You just get lots of people that don't have any understanding of what they need to do to move forward, so they turn to the loudest voices in the room, which is usually either communism or radical Trumpism or some form of Catholic integralism. It's like whatever's screaming the loudest on Twitter that sounds vaguely appealing to your predisposed value set.
Well, I mean, as Christian Bob Dylan said, you got to serve somebody.
Is he officially Christian? Or
Bob Dylan? Well, I mean, okay, so if you follow me on Twitter, if you look at my avatar on Twitter, you know that I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. So, which is awesome because he's actually releasing a new album this year. He's like 80-something, I think.
I was gonna say he's kind of old. He's kind of go up there releasing folk songs at this time of his life.
I mean, the 3 songs he's released so far are pretty good, but so there was a time in the late 70s and early 80s where he was only making Christian music, and he had a conversion experience. But then he started slowly doing secular music again, and he's never really spoken about it. But he's definitely one of those artists that I'm attracted to because they refuse to, like, they don't think they have to present any kind of true persona to the media or anybody. I am like inherently attracted to artists like that who just, they're not really, it's not necessarily that they're trying to troll everybody, but they just don't feel a responsibility to tell the truth about themselves except through the music, through the art they're trying to create. And I love that mindset. I mean, you got the Bob Dylans of the world, the Kanyes of the world, Jack White, people like that. And those are some of my favorites, man.
Remember that like month-long period where Kanye West was gonna like save the West, and then it's kind of stopped for a while?
Well, I mean, he's doing his Christian stuff. He's pursuing. I mean,
is he still? Because I looked at his Twitter account a month ago, and it's like he hadn't sent anything out since February, and I'm like,
oh,
where did Gay go?
Kanye, like he goes through long periods where he doesn't get on Twitter at all.
Okay.
And then he will get on Twitter for a little while, usually if a new album is coming out or something like that.
Okay, that makes sense.
But he goes through very long periods where he doesn't do anything. So it's just radio silence. I mean,
maybe he's working on something, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff he's working on. He's got the Sunday service project he's been working on.
Is he still doing the Sunday services?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just stopped because of the whole coronavirus thing. But before that, it was in full swing pretty much.
Okay.
I would love to go see one of those. But also, he's trying to figure out... I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen, but he bought a gigantic ranch out in Montana, and he's trying to figure out ways to, like, have efficient production in the United States.
He's going to start a cult.
A lot of it's silly, but I think there's a lot of stuff he's trying to do that's like, hey, someone who has a lot of money is trying to put some thought and trying to get other people who are intelligent to come help with like ways to produce things more cheaply in the United States while at the same time paying workers reasonable amounts. I mean,
we need to get him on the Jordan Peterson podcast.
Oh my God. I would not be one bit surprised if he knows a lot about Jordan Peterson. Actually.
He does. He's quoted him on Twitter. He's also quoted Thomas Sowell on Twitter, which is something else. But
the problem is with Kanye, you never know, even if he quotes somebody, if he cares about it or not.
Well, that's the thing about Kanye. He's such an erratic personality. I don't know if you could have a sensible conversation with him just by sitting down. Like, I have this feeling like if I sat down to have a meaningful conversation about something, he'd spend the whole time like just kind of blurting ideas out and just
Yeah, that's definitely the way. But I will tell you, ever since, this post-conversion period that we're in with him right now, if you look at interviews or articles with him, he's probably the most straight in the head, like, like the most sensible that he's maybe ever been.
I don't know if I want to use the word sensible and Kanye West in the same sentence.
I said most sensible that he's ever been. I didn't say he is sensible.
He kind of reminds me of. He kind of reminds me of Elon Musk in that they got that same energy to him, where they're like,
totally.
Insanely rich, insanely smart. They're aware of some greater problem in society, but they can't quite fix, and they just start making all these erratic decisions that cause millions of dollars in money to start flowing randomly because of random tweets they spin out into the ether. They both have that energy to them, although Elon is erratic in a completely different way than Ye. I don't know how much impact that they're both going to ultimately make, but good grief, if like a religious movement starts around Kanye West that seriously like makes a difference, like what the heck is going to happen in future generations?
I hope something good comes out of it, but we shall see.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm curious as to how much range that ultimately gets. I mean, Kanye West has probably the biggest range of any celebrity alive right now, and I don't know what impact it's having on the ground, because I'm sure a lot of kids are like getting there like, oh, I want to hear this new rap album from Kanye. What is this crap?
A lot of people have reacted in that way, although the album is really good.
Yeah, it's a good gospel album.
Yeah. Well, have you heard the Sunday service one too? Like the one that he produced but is not on at all?
No, I haven't.
It's really good. It's
send it my way later. I haven't heard of it, so.
Oh yeah, it's really good. It's an actual gospel album with the Sunday service group, and he's not on it at all.
Okay.
Which I was really surprised by, but.
I remember I listened to Jesus is King when that came out, and was he singing in it, or was he just producing in it? Because I didn't remember because it was a lot of choral groups. I couldn't tell if he was one of the singers.
Jesus is King?
Yeah. All right,
Jesus is King.
I'm completely misremembering and like forgetting half the songs, because I'm sure he was in it. I just seem to the one thing I seem to remember from it was just him, was just the choral sections more than anything else. I'm sure he was singing. I'm sorry, I'm blind, deaf, and high right now. I'm not thinking right there.
Hi, I guess I won't ask why.
Well, blind, deaf, stupid, and high is no way to go through life, son.
Oh, there you go. Well, this is going to turn into the Joe Rogan podcast, I
guess. You ever tried DMT? Did you see that Freedom Tunes bit about that? About Joe Rogan, where it's Tim Pool asking very pointed questions, and it just keeps cutting over to Joe Rogan progressively doing more and more drugs until he turns into a unicorn.
You'll have to send that my way.
Yeah, you send me the gospel album. I'll send you the Joe Rogan Freedom Tunes video.
All right, you do that.
But yeah, what time do you have to duck out of here for your IT job?
I need to kind of wrap it up.
Okay, all right. Before we went, I wanted to kind of talk about what's going to happen with the podcast next, because you're going to be involved with it at some point.
Okay.
So as I've mentioned, I may not have mentioned it on Twitter, but essentially, episode 100 is going to be the last episode of the podcast as it existed before. Mostly because I kind of feel like every 50 episodes or so, it needs to be kind of upgraded into something a little bit better than it was before. I did that when I got to episode 50. I upgraded the graphics package. So, I mean, as we speak, I'm testing out OBS software, and I'm testing out, and I'm recording footage, and I'm recording music, and my goal is to make a new version of the podcast I'm going to call the Groupthink Network. And the way it's going to work is that I'm going to split the podcast up into multiple discussion types. So there's going to be one for Groupthink Theology, Groupthink Entertainment, Groupthink Politics, Groupthink Reading Club, Groupthink Hangouts for when it's just me and some other bozos that don't really have an intellectual topic to discuss. And ideally, within sometime in the next few weeks, we're going to start seeing the first few episodes of that. I mean, I've got Esther O'Reilly Emily Urban, Jacob Berry, a couple of the people booked for the first 2 episodes. And ideally, it's going to be a video podcast, but I'm also going to start putting it out on Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud or wherever else I can think that people want to listen to podcasts. So if you're listening to this on Twitter, scream at me at @AntiSocialCritic so I can find your preferred podcast format. But yeah, ideally the next few weeks we're going to return with the newest version of the podcast, and it's going to be bigger and better than ever before, and maybe people will actually start listening to it then when it's not this awkward, shrubby little podcast on YouTube with weird, dissonant voices coming on every other week. So, but yeah, you'll definitely be one of the guests to bring on because I wanted to kind of finish off on a good guest. So,
awesome. Well, I'm really glad you had me on. Thank you, and I always enjoy it so far. Absolutely, sure. And you're this is one of the few podcasts I still listen to, actually. So
that's a shame.
I'm actually, like I said, I had to purge recently. Had to really purge to give myself time to actually listen to what I do want to listen to. And yeah, for anybody listening, this one made the cut.
What episodes are good? I don't know what episodes I've made that are actually good. I mean, this is such. The last few months have been a fever dream of recording with people I have respect for. So,
let me go to your YouTube page. I'm really glad you're going to be putting this out on different platforms, because when I've been on here before and I've told people about it, they're like, whatever their favorite platform is, like, well, I don't see it on there. And I was like, it's only on YouTube or SoundCloud. So it's really good to hear that you're going to do that. That's awesome.
I need to figure out how to do it for one, but it seems that's the one thing everyone always says. Oh, cool. You have a podcast? Where is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's okay to do it on YouTube, but you'll definitely get more views and just more engagement if you have it on multiple places. But I think the Eric and Sana talk movies and COVID-19, that's a really good one, to where you guys actually talked about stuff more like what we were actually planning to do, until we just I don't even know what happened the last
I have two kinds of podcasts. One where when me and my buddies hang out, we just rant for an hour and a half, or ones where I have someone on who has respectable opinions and I actually apply them with charged questions. So,
okay,
hanging out with you is kind of my hangout. Hanging out with you is kind of my fun time. But when Paul Vanderklay's on, it's all business.
Well, I don't know whether to take that as an insult or a compliment, but I'll take it as just neutral.
It means we have chemistry, and I can trust myself that the conversation's actually going to go places, as opposed to with someone someone who's professional who's like, okay, who are you and why did you invite me onto your podcast?
Well, it is true when you interview someone like that, you do need to have you need to direct the conversation and ask them questions, and then also give them a chance. But I completely understand what you're saying.
I learned that the hard way when I interviewed Kyle Mann.
Well, I haven't actually listened to that one.
It's the worst episode of the podcast in this rendition. Okay. I tried to make it a hangout conversation, but Kyle Mann's he's kind of too important for that. Not to say he's pretentious or anything, but we don't really have any reportage, so it just didn't go anywhere.
If you are interested in Disney, the Sam Lively Talks Woke Disney one is pretty interesting. If you're interested in that subject matter,
that was more interesting than I thought. Because I kind of thought he was going to be more of an ideologue than he ended up being. He was pretty sensible.
Even if hearing people say woke makes you upset, I mean, that's a pretty good one, because he actually kind of charts some really interesting developments through the early 90s and everything. The only thing I wish he would have talked about Lion King. I wanted to see what he thought about Lion King. He didn't talk about it much.
I can ask him, but...
I also searched on Twitter. He hasn't talked about it much on Twitter either.
Maybe he doesn't have a problem with it. Maybe just... That'd be my assumption, but you'll have to see.
I mean, you had the random one where missionaries talk South Africa. I mean, if you want to know some stuff that's going on with that was interesting.
If you can handle bad audio quality, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime you're dealing with missionaries, you kind of have to deal with that sort of thing.
Well, anyway. Anytime you're talking with someone from Africa, you have to deal with that.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you can get through that, that's really good. Let's see. The one with Christian Toto. Is it interesting to hear Christian Toto talk?
That was a fun convo.
Yeah. No, that was a really good one. Tyler Smith talks films and faith. That was the one I was pointing out, isn't it?
Yeah.
The one where he talked about Last Temptation of Christ. Your guys' conversation about Last Temptation of Christ is very interesting on that one. Then I'm looking for the one where you talked about Jordan Peterson, because that's one of my favorite ones.
That would have been back in November, so...
Okay, Emily Urban talks Jordan Peterson, episode 82, 6 months ago. That's a really good one.
All right. I might once I get that Apple account going, I might take the pick of the litter from this round of podcasts and put it up there too. But obviously, my goal is to make Groupthink Network a little cleaner. So I don't know how many of these will make the final cut.
When you post this one, you should put a time code in it where you start talking about your new format and post that like along with your announcement of the episode if you want to. That way you'd be like, if you want to hear me talk about the new format, go to this time code.
I've thought about doing that. Like I remember when this was the first iteration of this podcast was just me and a couple of my friends hanging out. So if you go before like episode 50, it starts getting real rough.
I tried to. I couldn't make it.
Oh man, I've never heard anyone reasonably get through those podcasts, but it's fun for me because it's basically just reliving all my college years with my buddies.
Yeah, of course.
But I can't imagine anyone actually listening to those podcasts and earnestly. But
also, I think when you start your new season, you should explain what your name is. Groupthink, because I've had a lot of people ask me not a lot of people, but a few people asked me when I did the first episode, why is it called Groupthink? And I said, all I knew to tell them is I think it's a joke on the 1984 Groupthink thing.
No, so the name Groupthink comes from. I probably haven't explained this in like 50 episodes, but the title Groupthink comes from my college friend group, where they kind of colloquially referred to themselves as the group. So groupthink was kind of a turn of phrase there. Maybe I need to rename it to something a little more accessible, like because I've used antisocial for a bunch of my other branding, so maybe I could do the antisocial network. But
that would be a funny one. Just make sure you don't name it anything too generic.
The antisocial network?
That's a big problem for a lot of podcasts. No, that would be good. I think the antisocial network.
Well, yeah, we came up with something live on air. I like it.
I'm just saying, just be careful. Like, don't just name it something generic, because then there's a chance of it getting lost completely. So.
Well, yeah, anti-social religion, anti-social politics. Yeah, that actually probably works better for the name.
Oh, give me some of them royalties.
Oh. You'll become the new permanent co-host and.
Okay. Remotely.
It's like Opie and Anthony, but on a shoestring budget, and we're saying much less shock jockey crap. So
there you go. I wonder how many people will get that reference.
Oh man, you need to go then?
Yeah, I need to go ahead and go.
All right, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, you're very welcome. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Sure thing. Have a good day, man.
You too.
And I will see the rest of you when the Antisocial Network premieres in the next few weeks. Thank you for 100 episodes, if you've actually watched that many. Bye, everyone.